Okay, good to see everyone. Uh, we had a little break last week. I forgot to mention the last class for Thanksgiving. The last class 2 weeks ago. So I hope no one showed up last week anticipating a class. Um, we're going to begin with our chanted prayers, and then we'll follow with a little meditation as usual. Sangye chorang suki chognam la changchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye dupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, that means today and in the past and in the future, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye chodang soki chognam la changchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho. By offering this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. So that can be visualized, or if you have a mandala set, actually placing in the rice or other substances, whether they be precious gems or gold dust or whatever on the mandala plate. You clean it first, anoint it with perfume and strew flowers upon it. And then you put on the substances representing Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, along with the other elements of the mandala, uh, that you visualize out of emptiness of the actual substances that you put on the mandala plate. You visualize this itself as a Buddha realm. May all migrators enjoy, as a result of this, a pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma. Please send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be subdued, those to be trained. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Nirya Tayami. Okay, good to see you. Hi, Karen's joined. Anna's here now. KT, David, Nawang, and Richard is also here. Okay, so we're going to begin with our usual, uh, now trying to generate bodhicitta with effort. So we begin by calming the mind, by watching the breathing and so forth. So place your attention on your respiration. Relax your body and mind. Let go of all other thoughts that you've been cultivating and those that you were unaware that you were cultivating. Just place your mindfulness on the respiration. How can you tell if your mind is fully focused on the respiration? By the mental factor of, you might say, mental, like mental spy, say, watching for some part of your mental energy, watching to see whether you're trying to multitask, so to speak, if your mind is thinking of other things. If it does notice that, let go of them and then reinvest that energy into the mindfulness of the breathing. Now, if you have had a little success in calming the mind, or at least recognized how difficult it is to let go of the other thoughts, let's bring our attention to the more subtle object of your mental consciousness. This is your gross mind that you can recognize through recognizing its content, because the mind itself being clear light, not obvious to apprehend at first. It's a hidden object. It's not any of your sense consciousnesses. You can withdraw your attention away from them as though a turtle or tortoise pulling in its limbs into its shell, into your heart area, heart chakra area. It may be helpful. It doesn't have a color. So that is, apprehension of that is your mental consciousness imagining something dark, perhaps being drawn in. You can recognize the entry and exit of various thoughts into the mind, opinions, judgments, conversation to yourself. plans, memories. All of those are occurring within the conventional clear light nature of your mind, which offers no resistance to their entry or reabsorption into the mind. Can you actually concentrate on that for a moment, even for a couple seconds? It's very difficult. It's what's this kind of meditation is called a Sutra Mahamudra meditation. This is also called, this clear light nature we try to perceive is called also called the conventional Buddha nature or developmental Buddha nature. And just savor that for a moment. We can develop, even now, at this point of our life, we can let go of faults that we have cultivated up to now. We've been habituated in by applying their antidotes because they do not form part of our mind, the clear light nature of our mind. They are just transient events. And the fact that we can recognize this and perhaps rejoice is because of this auspicious moment of a perfect human rebirth that we have right now. We wouldn't be able to meditate on the clear light nature of the mind, the developmental Buddha nature, if we were a dog or a spirit or a hell being or even a desire realm God. This auspicious moment has come about where we've met the Dharma. We have a human body with all our senses. We have the freedom to practice religion. We have the born at a time when the Buddha's teachings existing and still realizable community of patrons and like-minded practitioners, Sangha. The Buddha said that to recognize this, the rarity of it, to think that we can use this opportunity, this rare opportunity now, to go beyond the ordinary aspirations that we've had numberless times in the past, just to fulfill the 8 worldly dharmas of this lifetime, of the lifetime that we lived. Wanting to feel pleasant, wanting to be wanting to be loved, wanting to hear sweet ego-pleasing words and sounds, wanting to be known, well known, wanting to have possessions, power, and so forth. We can go beyond those aspirations, even as noble seeming as they might be in the world, to use this life to escape from cyclic existence or to achieve enlightenment. It's possible, even in this lifetime now. Within 3 years, 3 months, 3 half cycles of the moon, it's possible to achieve enlightenment, even sometimes by some methods quicker than that, but at least to set the groundwork to achieve enlightenment, based first of all on the desire to achieve enlightenment, itself authentically based on compassion for sentient beings. All our mother sentient beings, even the vilest individuals now, have been our mother numberless times in the past and will be again in the future as long as we're in cyclic existence. All of them are enmeshed with ignorance, motivated by ignorance and the view of the transitory collection, the identity view, to work for our own benefit, creating negative karma, ensnarling us in continuum of samsara for our own and for the benefit of all sentient beings who have been our mother numberless time, depthlessly kind. I must achieve enlightenment in order to benefit them in the highest way, not simply to cure their illness or to find them jobs or to, give them advice, worldly advice, help them out right now, but to help them with the nectar of the Dharma. To do that perfectly, we need to have achieved the state of enlightenment, omniscience, which has as its cooperative causes the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of wisdom. To think that that can be our main goal this lifetime, to accumulate the collections of merit and wisdom. In order to know how to do that, especially the wisdom front, but also the side of merit, we rely on the great treatises of the Buddha and their explanations in the Shastras by the great pundits that came close to the time of the Buddha in India, Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Chandrakirti. Even their texts are difficult to understand, so Lama Khapa, out of his compassion, elucidated the meaning of Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka in his Gompa Rabsal, Illumination of the Intent, which we're studying, which explains about especially the collection of wisdom, realization of emptiness. So I think I'm going to participate in the class today with the intention of using this auspicious moment to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings by accumulating the two collections. I'm going to listen, contemplate, and meditate in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. Good to see you. Shanka, good to see you, brother. Richard, Rachel is here. Mintovu is here. Venerable Nawang Chutso is here. Okay, so His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave a teaching to people from Kanauр, which is a region of Tibet, a region of India, rather, not that far from Dharamsala as the crow flies, but to get there takes a bit of time. Does anyone know any famous Kanauр people? Rachel, have you been to Kanauр? Yeah. Who is the famous translator?
Tôi Sáu là Rinchen Sangpo, right?
Rinchen Sangpo. Is that right? John and Paul?
I don't know.
But in terms of more recent Kanauris.
It's Kunu Lama Rinpoche, right?
Right, right. Who said that?
John.
John, yeah,
Sean
right.
did.
That's who I was referring to. So Kundalama Rinpoche was a teacher of the present Dalai Lama, someone that the Dalai Lama sought out for teachings especially on the Bodhisattva Charyavatara and many other things. And also Lama Zopa Rinpoche received teachings as well as Lama Yeshe from him. I remember at the 7th meditation course, Kundalama Rinpoche was in Boda at the bottom of the hill from Kopan. And Lama only allowed the students who had been to previous courses to go down with him and Rinpoche to receive teachings from Kundalama Rinpoche. Incredibly great Lama. I haven't met, I didn't meet Kundalama Rinpoche in that previous incarnation, but he is also called Nagi Lama. Or Nagi Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen. Nagi is a name that's associated with people from Kanauer. KT, your teacher in Atlanta was one of the Geshe that is now a lay person. What was his name?
Oh, Geshe Lobsang, Tenzin Negi.
Yeah. So he's also from Kanauer. So anyone that has the name, generally that means they're from Kanauer, but there are other people, other regions. So Kundalama Rinpoche, there are 2 people that have been identified as reincarnations, one of which is in Denmark. The other is, does anyone know who the other is?
Tenzin Priyadarshi.
Tenzin Priyadarshi.
Yeah, who is the Buddhist chaplain at MIT. So I've met him several times. So although I didn't meet, if he is indeed the reincarnation of Kundalama, I didn't meet the previous Kundalama, but I've met his and am friends with because I visited him when I was at MIT and talked many times. So the reason I mention this is that His Holiness the Dalai Lama during that teaching gave the oral transmission of some mantras, including the Buddha Shakyamuni mantra. And I'd mentioned to one of our students that I thought I'd given the lung, the oral transmission of the mantra to the class, and they had said, no, they didn't think I had. So I'm going to give the oral transmission of the Shakyamuni mantra right now. Doris, if you put up the, in the chat, you'll see a PDF of the mantra of Buddha Shakyamuni. Probably all of you know, but just so you have it there. So try to develop a special motivation to listen to this mantra and recite it along right after I recite it each time, 3 recitations. I'll recite it total of 6 times. The first 3 times, just the root mantra, Om Muni Muni Maha Mune Swaha, and then with the addition of Tadyata at the beginning, as Lama Yeshe also often liked to recite it as Tadyata Om Muni Muni Maha Mune Swaha. So I'll recite it twice, so you'll have both versions. So first, again, to set motivation, Sangye Chorang Soki Chognam La, Changchu Badu Dagni Kyapsuchi, Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki, Rola Pencher Sangye Drupa Shok, Sangye Chorang Soki Chognam La, Changchu Badu Dagni Kyapsuchi, Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki, Rola Pencher Sangye Drupa Shok, Sangye Chorang Soki Chognam La, Changchu Badu Dagni Kyapsuchi, Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki, Drola Penche Zange Drubasho. So I've received this, the oral transmission of this mantra from many lamas, including the His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the incomparable Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So listening and reciting after me 3 times, Om Mune Mune Maha Muneye Svaha. Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Spaha. Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Spaha. And then the longer version. Tadyata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Spaha. Tadyata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Spaha. Tadyata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Spaha. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche, with having quoted the instructions of Kuna Lama Rinpoche, said that the meaning of the mantra, there are probably many interpretations, but generally, Mune is the vocative tense. What do you call it? Vocative
Declension.
of Muni, which represents part of Shakyamuni's name, the Muni of the Shakya clan, the sage or the controlled one. Lama Zopa liked to translate it as controlled. So it's, oh, you might say, oh, controlled one, great controlled one, may it be. And excuse me, Kundalama Rinpoche's commentary was that this is talking about control of the meditations of the stages of the path of the person of lowest scope. That's the first mune. The second mune is control over the stages of the path of the person of intermediate scope. And Mahamuneya, representing the control over the Mahayana scope of the scope of the highest person of the three scopes of the Lan Rim. So I just wanted to share that with you. Due to these merits, due to these virtues, may I quickly become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrating beings. Okay. So just wanted to share that with you. If you ever have a chance of listening to teachings, even if they seem like random teachings of His Holiness, I always find something very, very useful. Such skillful means of His Holiness. So getting back to our teaching, we're going to start from this point in the text where it says, this grasping at true existence of things is described in the 70 stanzas on emptiness as the ignorance that is the root of cyclic existence. What page is that? This in the text?
242.
242. And if Diana, if you're looking through the what do you call it? The electronic version, this grasping at true existence of things is described. You'll be able to find it.
76.
So in Jeffrey's text, it's page 248. So encompass the two truths. So this is following on to the where we mentioned, we didn't go into so much detail last time, the paragraph just before that, the analogy of body faculty and its connection to the body illustrates that just as there is no support for the other four sense faculties that is discrete from or separate from the body, similarly, all the afflictions operate with delusion or moha, or in other words, ignorance, as their support. They all have ignorance as their support and not divorced from that ignorance. That ignorance also includes the view of the transitory collection. Because of this, all the afflictions will become undone if ignorance is destroyed. Jim is translating delusion here as is his choice for the word moha or timug, which we could say ignorance. Thus, Aryadeva says we should revere the discourse on dependent origination in terms of emptiness of intrinsic existence, which is its antidote. Or as Jeffrey says, that last sentence there, and hence it is said that one should be intent on just discourse about its antidote, the antidote to this ignorance that's grasping the true existence. Its antidote, dependent arising, the emptiness of inherent. Okay, so last time for people to think about what's the causal sequence of the delusions. We talked about it a little bit in class. We talked about it also in the discussion group. If you weren't there following the last class, you can get the transcript, I think, from the archives. So let me ask some questions. Nadine, is ignorance a cause of attachment?
Yes.
Okay, good short answer. Is it a does it also let me say, put it another way, does ignorance have a relationship with attachment? And
Yes.
what kind of relationship does it have with attachment?
Because of ignorance, we grasp at inherent existence, and that leads to attachment later in the process.
Yeah. So you would say, just as a short answer, you'd say it would be a causal relationship. Does it have a natural relationship with attachment?
I don't think so. I don't cause them.
Paul, what do you think? Does ignorance have a causal it obviously has some kind of causal relationship to attachment, but we'll go into that in a second. Does it have a natural relationship with attachment?
A natural relationship.
Remember, there are two kinds of relations, right?
Right.
Causal relations, where the cause precedes the effect. Natural relations, when the two things abide together at the same time. So say, for instance, when, does anyone want to make a stab at that? Suvansh, does ignorance in the view of the transitory collection, is that present at the same time as attachment?
Venerable George, my guess is going to be yes. It is there. It is there. It may not be evident, but it's there.
Yeah. So it's in the retinue. It's one of the mental factors that would be in the retinue of that primary consciousness. So it has there is an ignorance which has a natural relationship with attachment. That is the ignorance that's existing at that same time, but it's not causing the attachment, but it's there. Then there's an ignorance which is a cause of attachment. What kind of cause is that, Nadine? Is that a substantial cause?
I would say yes.
So ignorance itself becomes the substance of attachment.
Ignorance pervades attachment.
Yeah. Then just think. So I'm asking, is it a substantial cause? Like, say, for instance, a seed is a substantial cause of a sprout, right?
Yeah. Yes.
the seed transforms and becomes the sprout and no longer is in the form of a seed. So if ignorance was a substantial cause of attachment, it would have to transform into attachment and disappear. Is that the case?
No, it doesn't disappear, it stays.
So what kind of cause would it be? John, what kind of cause would it be? Do you know? Or make a guess? Or maybe Stephen. Okay, go on, John.
My only guess is that it's a sequential relationship in that sense. But
Yeah,
I
so
don't.
that is causal. It's a relationship that's sequential, so it precedes the effect. Stephen, what kind of cause would it be? If it's not a substantial cause,
It would be a cooperative cause.
it'd be a cooperative cause or cooperative condition, right? So it's something like of the status of water for the sprout. So as we talked about before, both in class and in the discussion group, the inappropriate attention, once an object appears to you and you discern it, you have discrimination of it as being attractive or unattractive or neutral, then the feeling arises as being pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. As a result of that, inappropriate, if you don't attend to that appearance to your consciousness in the proper way, if you attend inappropriately, with inappropriate attention, thinking, oh, this is really nice, various, superimposing qualities upon it that don't really exist. It's at that point that the cooperative condition of ignorance would rear its ugly head. Anyway, okay, so that's just a little bit of digression. So Mikhail's not here today, right? Okay. So in Chimpa's text, we said all of the afflictions will become undone if delusion is destroyed. So if you can get rid of ignorance, one will no longer inappropriately pay attention to the appearance of things as being truly beautiful and so forth. And one will no longer think of oneself as the recipient of the pleasure or the pain and so forth through the view of the transitory collection. So both ignorance and the view of the transitory collection, both can be understood as being so influential there. So let's continue. This grasping at true existence of things is described in the 70 stanzas on emptiness as the ignorance that is the root of cyclic existence. So the 70 stanzas was written by whom? Shankar, do you know?
Nagarjuna, right?
Nagarjuna, yeah. And the 60 verses of reasoning, also by Nagarjuna, says, in Jiva's translation, having found a locus, one is caught by the twisting snake of the afflictions. Those whose minds have no locus will not be snared by such a snake. What was that note? 443 was just saying, he's giving another alternative translation of that in his note 443. So Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of that verse, a little bit different, I think a little bit clearer. If any base, which is, I think, is what Jimpa translates as locus. And that is in the Tibetan, it says, Kangyang Rungwe ne na. If one finds a basis that, and Jeffrey has in parentheses, that is an inherently existent object. if one finds an inherently existent object, if one finds a basis, or Jimpa says locus, one is seized by the winding snake of the afflictive emotions. So what does that mean from our previous discussion? If what appears to you seems to be inherently existent and you go along with that, you inappropriately attend to that, you'll be seized by the winding snake of the afflictive emotions. Whose ever mind is without such a base, without apprehension of an inherently existent object, is not seized by the afflictive emotions. That's Jeffrey's translation of that. So Jimpa in translating Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary after that. So that's a quotation from Nagarjuna. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, thus it says that if one finds any locus as the focus of objectification for grasping at true existence, one will then be snared by the snake of the afflictions. Or as Jeffrey translates that, he says, that is Lama Tsongkhapa's, Jeffrey's translating also Lama Tsongkhapa. So Lama Tsongkhapa is talking about Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna says that if one finds a base that is any focus of observation of a consciousness apprehending true existence, one's mind is seized by the snake of the afflictive emotions. Does that explain any more? That's more or less what we said before, right? If one finds a base that is any focus, so here, Tenzin gi mikte. So mikte, focus of observation. Mikte. So mikte is something that we talked about before, is sort of like something that you really believe in. If one finds a base that is something you really believe in, in a consciousness apprehending true existence, one's mind is seized by the snake of the afflictive emotions. How are we doing? Is it making sense? Okay. Immediately after that, Jimpa's text translates, immediately after the stanza. So that previous stanza was, I didn't say which stanza that was in the 60 verses of reasoning. I'm not sure. Maybe in Jimpa's 443.
Jeffrey says it's verse 51.
Verse 51. So this will be now verse 52. So immediately after that, in those whose minds have a locus, why would the grave poison of afflictions not arise? Or as Jeffrey says, why would the great poisonous afflictive emotions not arise in those whose minds have a basis? And in parentheses or in brackets, he says, an inherently existent object. Nedan Cheba. So this is all getting down, again, reiterating this fact that as long as there is a grasping to true existence, inherent existence, not just the appearance of it, because true existence, inherent existence appears even to the arhats and to the bodhisattvas on the pure grounds. But as long as there's this basis refers to something which you are adhering to, as long as one's mind have a locus, have a basis for, a belief in true existence. One is assenting to true existence and assenting to inherent existence. Why would the grave poison of the afflictions not arise? Or why would the great poisonous afflictive emotions not arise in those whose minds have a basis, bracket, an inherently existent object? So Jimpa's translation continues. This then is the excellent standpoint of the noble Nagarjuna. What does Jeffrey say? So I'm not sure where oh yeah, so Jeffrey's the words, this is the standpoint of Nagarjuna, doesn't come in Jeffrey's until at the end of his next sentence. Therefore, this tenet that the ignorance apprehending inherent existence is the root of cyclic existence is the excellent assertion of the superior Nagarjuna. Excuse me. So this is, remember the when we talked about root of cyclic existence, it's not saying that ignorance is the cause of cyclic existence. It is the root of cyclic existence. Is it the cause of cyclic existence? Rachel, what do you think? Is ignorance the cause of cyclic existence? We don't use it.
Well, you're saying that I mean, when you look at the 12 links, right? It's like the link is first ignorance, and then you move on into the other. So it's not, again, back to what we were saying earlier, it's not the primary or substantial cause. It's that root. It's like a root cause, but it's a root condition. If you don't have ignorance, none of the rest will arise.
Right. It's a cooperative condition. In the 12 links, we never say that one link is the cause of the next. We say that because of the condition of one link, the next link can arise. So in that sense, maybe that's why it's said that ignorance or in Chandrakirti's view, the root of the view of the transitory collection is the root of cyclic existence. So then the text continues in a comment linking these last two lines to the preceding ones. One reads in Chandrakirti's commentary on the 60 stanzas. So these were two verses or parts of verses from the 60 stanzas on reasoning by Nagarjuna. Chandrakirti himself wrote a commentary to those 60 stanzas. So in that text, Chandrakirti says, to demonstrate that it is impossible for those who objectify forms and so on to relinquish the afflictions, though they might aspire to, Nagarjuna states the following. Or in Jeffrey's text, it says, as a transitional commentary before those later two lines, Chandrakirti's commentary on the 60 stanzas says, in order to indicate that an abandonment of afflictive emotions does not occur in those who, even though they apprehend an inherent nature of forms and so on, want to abandon the afflictive emotions, the text says, and in a subsequent comment also says, you've got to be agile here to follow. Reading Jimpa. Now, if one objectifies things as real entities, then when myriad afflictions like attachment will emerge in. Now, if one objectifies things as real entities, then myriad afflictions like attachment will emerge inexorably. What does inexorably mean?
It always happens. It has to happen.
Has to happen, right? What is it? Irreversible, Jeffrey Chance, irreversible afflictions. Is that how he translated? If one apprehends things to be truly existed, myriad irreversible afflictive emotions. I didn't put down the Tibetan there, so I can't tell what exactly what he means by myriad irreversible afflictive emotions, such as desire, will definitely arise. So as long as one is grasping at things as truly existent, then the whole spectrum of emotions, of afflictions can arise, such as attachment, without choice, without your choice. You can't just decide, so I'm not going to get angry, I'm not going to get attached, and so forth. Why? Jimpa's translation says, because in the event something appeals to one's mind, it would be difficult to avert attachment toward it. In the event one's mind finds it unappealing, however, it would then be difficult to avert aversion and hostility toward it. This is something not new. We've talked about this before. When something when it looks appealing, when it looks attractive, and as a result of that, the pleasant feeling arises, and one wants to get it. It would be very difficult to avert attachment. You could avert attachment temporarily by the temporal antidotes to attachment, thinking of the meditation on repulsion and so forth, and the antidotes toward anger and so forth when something looks unattractive. But it's difficult to do. So then the text continues, even if the object happens to be something that is neither appealing nor unappealing, unattractive nor unattractive, the commentary states, ignorance will still arise in relation to it. So with the three kinds of appearances, things can be attractive, unattractive, or neutral, as a result of which one has pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings toward them. The neutral feelings still give rise to a continuity of ignorance. Therefore, while the apprehension of things as existing by way of their own characteristics remains present within one's mind, while that remains present in one's mind, it is maintained that either attachment or aversion will arise. Well, attachment, aversion, or ignorance will arise. And even if these two are absent, instances of delusion will continue to arise. Okay, there's the third. Instances of ignorance or moha will arise. Richard, did you have a question?
The question right here is, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but if the apprehension of things as existing by way of their own characteristics remains, if that means that attachment and aversion will arise, does that mean that attachment and aversion will arise in the minds of arhats? Because they're still apprehending things as existing by way of their own characteristics. They're just not believing it.
Right. Here, let's see, I'm not sure I put again, I didn't put the Tibetan there. I think what is talking about in Jeffrey's translation, let's put it this way. Chandrakirti's commentary says that even if the object is neither attractive nor unattractive, ignorance is generated. Thus, it is asserted that when a consciousness apprehending an object as established by way of its own characteristic, so that means apprehending here means grasping. grasping at something as
Right.
existing by way of its own characteristic. As
That-
long as it's operating in one's continuum, mental continuum, either desire or hatred is generated, and even if those two are not, a similar type of bewilderment operates. So that means all three, depending on whether it's attractive, unattractive, or neutral, attachment, aversion, or bewilderment will be operate. They will continue. Is that okay? Yeah, Shankar.
I think so. I think that what Hopkins makes it a little bit clearer that that's not the apprehension of an arhat. That's not the way an arhat would apprehend these objects, not as grasp.
They don't grasp or apprehend them as existing by their own characteristic, or they don't apprehend them as inherently existent, to use the various theoretical synonyms of the same term there. Shanka, did you have a thought also? Shanka? I thought you had raised your hand before. No? No.
My space bar won't unmute. Weird. Okay, anyway, what does
Sorry.
bewilderment mean here?
Okay, so earlier we mentioned that in this context, instead of using the word avidya, which means ignorance, or magrigpa, the word that's being used is moha in Sanskrit, right? Moha in Tibetan is timug. So that is translated variously. Jimpa translates it as delusion.
I see. Okay.
Jeffrey translates it as bewilderment, which I think is a little bit better for my mind, because delusions, sometimes we think of the klesha, the afflictions. Earlier days, we translated them as delusions, the six root delusions, rather than the six root afflictions and so forth. So I don't like to use delusion for that so much. How are we doing? Okay? Following? Okay. So then there's a quote from the Bodhisattvacharya Vatara. This takes a little bit of effort to understand. Let's see. So Jimpa's translation says, the mind that takes focal objects, difficult to understand how he gets this translation. The mind that takes focal objects will get stuck on one or another. And the mind divorced of emptiness will when ceased, will arise again, just as in the meditative attainment of non-discrimination. I find that Jimpa's translation of that stanza from the Bodhisattvacharya Vatara a bit difficult to understand. Jeffrey's translation says as follows, and this is, what do we say, stanzas 48C to 49C in chapter 9 of Bodhisattvacharya Vatara. So chapter 9 is what chapter? Does anyone know?
The wisdom chapter.
Wisdom
Yeah.
chapter. So this is a wisdom chapter, weighs in for verse 49, 40, 48, 49. So Jeffrey translates it. Get it back here. He makes it, he puts in many parenthetical bracketed commentary to this. So let's just read it straight what he says. As long as minds involved with apprehension of inherent existence remain manifestly in some person's continuums, some person's continua, the manifest attachment induced by such minds will not be overcome. That makes sense, right? Though manifest afflictive emotions are temporarily halted in a mind lacking realization of emptiness. So how could manifest afflictive emotions be temporarily halted if you have not realized emptiness? KT, how could manifest afflictive emotions could be temporarily halted?
Through antidotes. Through
Yeah, in this case, it seems like he's talking more about the
shamatha.
The samapati. So he says, as in the case of abiding in the absorption of non-discrimination. Remember when we talked about the various kinds of absorptions? So at this point, Geshe Zopa gave some commentary to this. He said, the other glasses on, thanks to Diane and Brock. Oh, you might tell Diane, I saw a big truck yesterday, Brock Mountain. There's some construction company near here that does land moving, and it said Brock Construction, so or Brock Mountain.
Brock is very constructive.
Yeah, I know. So Geshe Zopa said to some people, let me go down further. He said, some yogis who are bothered by mind, having the mind with attachment and hatred and so forth, they try to refute those, to get rid of those states of mind through certain types of meditation and equipoise, non-conceptual meditations. Those are the two samapatis. Asamjana samapati and nirodha samapati. You may remember when we talked about the cessational absorption and the absorption without discrimination before. It's come up many, many times in the text. The asamjana samapati, so that means the absorption without discrimination. Is that right? Yeah. Means people who try to meditate through shamatha, and after that, the first dhyana, second dhyana, they achieve all of those. Even they achieved a high level of dhyana, the fourth dhyana, and then at that time the mind is very controllable. At a certain level, the meditation deeper and deeper, finally able to completely stop the senses, completely stop the mental thought, and completely thoughtless and non-conscious level. If you left that at that point, all of them are leveled out and the mental consciousness is leveled out. So this asamjana samapati, they have no, it's as though the mind has ceased for some period of time. And there in the Abhidharma, we've mentioned on several occasions in the past, all of the offshoots of this. At that point, it's as though the mind doesn't exist at all. The body is sitting there. The mind seems to have stopped. Mahayana would interpret it as being there's still a continuum of subtle mind continuing, but the gross levels of mind have ceased completely for some period of time. But eventually, when the karma finishes for that absorption, one will arise from that again. So that time, these yogis are able to stay in that meditation for a long time. Even sometimes they can stay for eons. I think I mentioned to you, I remember Geshe at Institute of Lama Tsong Khapa mentioned that some of the monks in Buxa in India, when they came from Tibet and they were encamped there through the graces of the Indian government giving them that camp, that they found beings in meditative posture where the fingernails had grown around their bodies as though they were still living, but they were in that meditative state for many, many years. In some cases, it says even eons in this samja samapati. But when they have not got rid of the root of samsara, if they've just temporarily ceased the afflictions because of this non-discrimination samapati, absorption, sooner or later they'll have to be reborn, and then again they start through ignorance because they already have ignorance. So therefore, Tongpa Dang Delwe Sem, the mind that is devoid of emptiness, means that without a realization of emptiness, however long they cease them, they will arise again in the future. So do you kind of get the gist of that? So this is not talking about just the general antidotes to the afflictions, but it's talking about this extreme antidote of even having no mind at all. So for eons, there are no afflictions arising. But if you haven't gotten rid of the root of cyclic existence, when the karma to remain in that absorption, that cessational absorption has ceased, one will again be reborn in cyclic existence, and through the imprints of ignorance and the view of the transitory collection, one again will create negative karma and be born in cyclic existence. Make sense? Okay. How are we doing? Okay. In this regard, reading Jimpa again, there is no difference between these two masters, Chandrakirti and Shantideva, and Buddhapalita when it comes to the interpretation of the intention of the noble Nagarjuna. So they're all agreeing that while ignorance abides in the mind, one will not be able to avert the generation of the afflictions, especially attachment, aversion, and bewilderment. Snehi, do you have a thought?
No, Venerable George, I was just thinking, is this a good time for you to take a little break and stretch your legs?
Yeah, let's just go a little bit further. Thanks for reminding. Here's another long sequence here. Right. It's talking about the obstructions, omniscience. Okay. So Jimpa's translation says, an implication of this important point is this, as follows, okay? The presentation that one could attain nirvana through only the path of the 16 characteristics of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence, becomes provisional, and the identification of the afflictions based on such a presentation of the path remains incomplete as well. Okay, I'm going to ask someone to explain that. Is that clear? One way, it's not clear. Oh, okay. Snehi says not clear. Who thinks it's clear? Richard says no also, right? It's not clear. KT, is it clear? No. JC is gone. Where is JC? Okay, John?
Nothing is clear in this text the first time around.
Say again?
Nothing is clear in this text the first time around.
Okay. So let me read what Jeffrey's translation of that is and see if it's any clearer. Due to this essential, comma, Buddha's explanation that one can pass away from sorrow, one can reach nirvana merely through the paths of the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence and so forth. So what does that mean? You know, each of the Four Noble Truths have four aspects that are mentioned in various ways. So for instance, the truth of suffering, that's the first noble truth, right? What are its four aspects? Suvash, do you know what the four aspects are of the first noble truth?
Venerable George, let me see. So it's about suffering. And
What are
four of them.
The footnotes.
Yeah, it's listed.
is it in the footnotes? Okay,
It's in Jeffrey's footnote. It's in Jeffrey's footnote.
Okay, then I'll let somebody else answer. I'm sorry.
Let's see so suffering. The four antidotes, the four aspects of the truth of suffering are impermanence, suffering, empty, and selflessness. He writes emptiness. I think it's usually tongpa, meaning empty, and selflessness. So emptiness and selflessness here mean different things. The second noble truth is the truth of the origin of suffering. It usually doesn't say cause, but of the four aspects, what the first aspect is cause, second is origin, strong production condition, and so forth. Those are called the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So Jeffrey is saying here, his translation says, Buddha's explanation that one can reach nirvana through merely the path of the 16 attributes has a thought behind it, or is a Jimpa says here provisional. What's the usual translation of this? John or Paul, do you know?
Probably, I'm assuming it's gompa, so probably there's like an intention behind
Intentional or something, yeah.
It's kind of like what do we say in English? We say it has an ulterior
yes.
ulterior motive, right? That means it's not you said something, but your actual motive was something that's not apparent at first glance. So when the Buddha said that you could achieve nirvana through meditation on the 16 attributes, in the Hinayana Abhidharma, it sounds like that's all you have to do. They don't take the aspects in the same way that the Mahayana takes the aspects, but they think that it's possible without realizing emptiness itself that one could achieve enlightenment just by meditating on the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So it has a thought behind it. It has an ulterior motive. What does Jeffrey say? It has an intention, meaning that when the Buddha taught such, he had something else in mind, but could not teach it due to the inadequacy of the listeners, and thus taught something else that, though literally unacceptable, was helpful to his listeners. It's like when the Buddha was asked if there was a soul in some circumstances to some Vedic followers, he said yes. But that was an ulterior motive or had an intention behind it and so forth. Furthermore, the identification of afflictive emotions in terms of those paths is incomplete and requires more in order to identify them on a subtler level. So we talked about this before in terms of what the afflictive emotions are. Snehi, you want to remind me about a break? Is that what?
I actually had a question and to remind you about the break.
Yeah. What's your question?
The question was, on the four characteristics of the First Noble Truth. So for the followers of the Pali Canon, like they would not have included emptiness in as one of the four. It would just be selflessness.
So it's usually empty. So instead of emptiness, and by that it means something different. So selflessness for them means what in the Polycanon, or for, let's say the lower
The lack of a substantially existent self.
self-supporting, substantially existent. So that's the lack. That's selflessness. The no self, right? So empty means the lack of a person being permanent, partless, and independent. It doesn't mean emptiness in the Mahayana. They take it not in the Mahayana sense of emptiness. In fact, in the whole Pali Canon, you only find the word emptiness a handful of times. And I mean, just sometimes it's difficult to find in one of the collections, emptiness mentioned once. And in there, it has a very different meaning. Like, say, for instance, the Buddha said, like this meeting home for the Sangha, meeting house for the Sangha is empty of monks. There is an emptiness of, it's almost like other emptiness. So what he's saying here is, I put my, I can't think without my glasses on sometimes. So furthermore, in Jeffrey's translation, the identification of afflictive emotions, the klesha, in terms of those paths is incomplete and thus requires more in order to identify them on a subtler level. So the afflictive emotions from the Hinayana point of view here, from the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika point of view, would be triggered by grasping to a self-supporting, substantially existent person. Though such afflictions do exist, right? There is an attachment that is triggered by grasping to a self-supporting, substantially existent person. But that's not the subtlest affliction. That's not the subtlest, let's say, attachment. There's an attachment that's triggered by grasping to a self-supporting, substantially existent person. But that attachment is not as subtle as the attachment that's triggered by, if I could use the word triggered by here, it's caused by grasping to inherently existent person. So that's what's being meant here. Furthermore, the identification of the klesha, the afflictive emotions, in terms of those paths. What is he talking about, those paths? What paths is he talking about? So Buddha's explanation that one can pass away from sorrow, one can reach nirvana merely through the paths of the 16 Noble Truths. So he's using the word path, talking about meditation on the 16 aspects. Furthermore, the identification of the klesha in terms of those paths is incomplete because it's only talking about the grosser level afflictions. It's not talking about the klesha that are brought about by grasping to inherent existence, and thus requires more in order to identify them on a subtler level. Does that help, Richard? Okay, there's a little clearer, right? Okay, let's take a little short break. If you'd like to get a cup of coffee, tea, or whatever, or just need to stretch, we'll come back in a minute. I'll leave my microphone on, and I'll listen if any of you want to debate with one another about this. There we go. Okay, I hope you're refreshed, legs stretched, tummies full of tea. Shankar, you didn't get a chance to get any tea, so you can.
Can't see you very. Your camera is like totally black. Have you put tape on it?
Oh, I haven't. Let me see what's happened here. Yeah, let me go back to. I have to. Sorry about that. I didn't realize something must have happened. Where is Zoom? Here we go. Zoom.
I see a Vin George and I want to paint it
Settings,
black.
video. Huh, iPhone camera. Supposed to be there. Okay,
There you are.
that's my computer camera, but my iPhone camera is not working for some reason. Okay, we'll just go with the computer camera. Okay.
Nice concept.
Yeah. You haven't seen? Oh, that's what we had for long period before I got the using my iPhone as the camera. Okay, so we're back again. This is the tree of assembled gurus from Lama Chopa. Okay. So, Jimpa said, an implication of this important point is this. The presentation that one could attain nirvana through only the path of the 16 characteristics of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence, becomes provisional. It has an ulterior motive. The Buddha taught it because the people that he was teaching to weren't ready to understand the deeper meaning. And the identification of the afflictions based on such a presentation of the path remains incomplete as well. As Jeffrey's translation, I think, was a little more elaborate. If you're basing your understanding of the afflictions as being they're triggered by grasping to a self-supporting, substantially existent person, that's just the gross afflictions that has to be augmented by the afflictions that are defined by being triggered by or generated through under the influence of ignorance that grasps to inherent existence. Jimpus continues saying, one can from this discussion also understand other afflictions such as pride, or conceit, he says here. With respect to ignorance, identity view and the view grasping at extremes as defined in this unique way too, one should understand that each consists of two levels, the acquired and the innate. Fearing excessive length here, I will not spell out these issues in greater detail. Is that clear? Kind of clear. Karen, how are you doing? Is it clear? Jeffrey's translation says, in dependence on these points, pride and so forth should also be understood as having coarse and subtle forms, right? There's all of the other afflictions. There's a coarse form that is brought about by grasping to a self-supporting, substantially existent person. And there's a subtle form that's brought about by grasping to an inherently existent person and so forth, or in phenomena and so forth. It should be known that the uncommon ignorance, which is the view of the transitory collection, there's that, maybe I shouldn't have said that. It should be known that the uncommon ignorance, the view of the transitory collection, and extreme views also have both artificial and innate forms. So this is talking, is artificial and innate the same as coarse and subtle, Nadine?
No, it is not the same.
What's the difference?
Innate or artificial refers to those afflictions which we are born with, and the other which we have learned. And the coarse and the subtle is something different. It's not the same.
Right. You could have coarse and subtle forms of artificial views.
Ah, yes, yes.
Could you have coarse and subtle forms of innate afflictions?
I don't know.
Paul, what do you think?
coarse and subtle forms of innate. I would, I would think not.
Well, can you have innate grasping to self-supporting, substantially existent person? Oh, I haven't called on Richard. I haven't called on Stephen. Stephen, you're nodding. Vociferous.
Yeah, I think so. So you would, if you grasped at a substantially existent self-supporting person, that would be the coarse form. And if you grasped at the inherently existent person, that would be the subtle form.
Right, that we agree with. But in terms of innate and artificial, so that means innate form of grasp to a
substantially existent self-supporting person is an artificial grasping.
Is it only artificial? Snehi's saying no.
Is that, yeah, or it might be the
Hey, what do you say?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know, it feels like we naturally have a sense of self that we grasp at. Like that is the more obvious one than the inherent one to me.
Yeah, so innate and artificial refer to the afflictions that are transmitted from life to life. Innate refers to those that are transmitted from life to life without having to learn anything. So we do have innate afflictions. You could say together at birth. You know, you have it at birth. Like some people are innately intelligent from their birth because they have that some kind of karmic propensity for that intelligence to blossom that lifetime. But when we talk about the afflictions, we have innate afflictions. You know, not just you don't have to learn any kind of tenets, any kind of spiritual system, or any kind of be indoctrinated in any way to have anger, attachment, and so forth. But we just said that there are various forms. There are these two forms, subtle and gross forms of the afflictions. The gross forms arise from the grasping of self-supporting, substantially existent person. Subtle form arise from grasping to an inherently existent person. So it's not sufficient to say all of the afflictions are included with those that are triggered by grasping a self-supporting, substantially existent person. But the question is, grasping a self-supporting, substantially existent person, is there an innate form of that?
I think so, because I think when you're born, we don't learn it. It just seems like there is someone there who's telling me what to do, and you know, that very strong sense that yes, you know, there's something in me that is a self.
Right.
It feels like that's innate as well. Like it's
we're talking about the self-supporting, substantially existent person. Okay, so there is an innate form of that, and Nadine thinks I think she's found the place.
Yes, I read in my notebook, grasping at self-supporting, substantially existing self also has innate forms. We learned it before on 23rd November. I read it.
We learned it before. We discussed it before. Whether we learned it or not is unclear. Thank you for that. Yeah, so that was the point. So there is an innate form of the delusions. So there's a difference here between coarse and subtle. So let's say the coarse one, that means the delusions, the afflictions that arise from grasping a self-supporting, substantially existing person, that has both artificial and innate forms, as does the ignorance, as do the afflictions that are more subtle, that are generated from grasping to an inherently existent person. They have, do they have both innate and artificial forms, Paul? Grasping to, just say the ignorance itself, grasping to true existence or inherent existence. Does that have both an intellectually formed artificial form and an innate form? Karen is slightly nodding. I'm not sure if she's here.
I mean, it certainly is there's certainly an innate form. I'm just wondering if there's an artificial form or not.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, something we can discuss on Monday about that. But as Nadine pointed out, the what are we saying here? The coarse afflictions, that means those that have arisen from grasping self-supporting substantially existent person, also have an innate form. That was one of the things that was unclear. Now, Venerable, what do you think?
There we go. All right. Well, I had a question about knowledge, knowledge obscuration. I mean, what's the difference? How does this fit with afflictive obscurations and knowledge obscurations?
Right. In fact,
is this different words for some of the same things there? Or how does that fit?
That topic will come up very shortly, but yeah,
okay.
In this context, all of these, the afflictions themselves and their seeds are which kind of obscuration? Does anyone want to weigh in? Stephen, what are
could you repeat that again? The question again, please.
Okay, I will repeat. The afflictions themselves and their seeds are what kind of obscuration, Stephen?
Afflictive obscurations.
They're not the obscurations to omniscience, obstructions to omniscience?
No. No, it's the imprints, not the seeds.
It's the imprints of those. In fact, that very statement will be coming up in the following sections, I guess. So the obstructions to omniscience, Venerable, are, let's say, for instance, there are various kinds of obstructions to omniscience, obscurations to omniscience. One set comes about because of the imprint of the delusions. That is to say, the delusions come about because of seeds, right? And those delusions, those afflictions and their seeds, once they're abandoned, they no longer will arise. The afflictions will no longer arise. But because of the presence of afflictions, the kleshas, the delusions, in the past, they've left not only seeds for their regeneration, but they've also left an imprint in the consciousness. That imprint from the afflictions is one of the kinds of obstructions to omniscience. There are other sets also. Okay, so we'll continue there.
But would that be a subtle innate obscuration?
So the obstructions to omniscience are not called
obscurations. Okay.
They're obstructions, obscurations, however you like to translate it. They are not usually called, the terminology of innate or artificial is referring to the afflictions themselves, not to the imprint.
So not a subtle innate is not an imprint. That's what I guess I was wondering.
Right,
okay.
right. Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's so Lama Tsongkhapa finished by saying, fearing excessive length here, I will not spell out these issues in greater detail. Or as Jeffrey says, fearing that such would take too many words, I will not write more. Okay. You're probably happy about that, right? I'm glad he didn't write more. Okay, so let's continue. Similarly, Jimpo's translation, there is the presentation where the conceptualization of grasping at things as true existent as truly existent, maybe, I'm not sure, is characterized as what is to be relinquished on the path of meditation, differentiating it into 9 levels of small, medium, and great, and correlating these to their corresponding antidotes, namely the 9 stages of the path of meditation. So where does that come from? Is that completely confusing, or is that... JC, what do you think? When I say JC, I'm not referring to the Son of God. I'm referring to John Campbell.
They're one and the same.
Yeah, I'm scrambling. I also have a very bad internet connection today. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So like you're unfortunately this
Okay,
my feed is not
the dog ate
your voice is not continuing.
the dog ate your internet connection. Okay. Okay. So anyway,
I'm struggling with that.
I'll ask someone else.
Pretty
Richard.
much.
Richard. That statement there. Similarly, there is the presentation where the conceptualization of grasping. Is that section clear?
I'm not sure I understand why he suddenly brings it up, but I mean, I understand the words. I think I do.
Okay. Good point. So
I just don't understand. I don't understand why the previous point was an implication of the point before that. And I don't understand why he brings this up here, but I think I understand the words.
Right. So the previous implication, where it said an implication of this important point is this: the presentation that one could attain nirvana through only the path of the 16 characteristics becomes provisional. That came about because when you talk about the afflictions and you start to recognize that there are gross afflictions and subtle afflictions, usually from the Prasangika point of view, mainly we're always talking about the afflictions that are triggered by grasping to self-support, to inherently existent person. But because there are also afflictions triggered by grasping to the self-supporting substantially existent person that are grosser. That's why he said the implication of this important point is this: the presentation that one could attain nirvana through the 16 aspects, meditation on the paths of the 16 aspects. That's what generally in the Hinayana teachings, that's considered to be the path to achieve nirvana. So from this previous discussion, it's stated this important point to notice that an implication from this is that teaching of the paths of the achieving nirvana through the path of the 16 aspects in the Hinayana interpretation is just provisional. It has an intention. It's not the final meaning. Actually, from the Prasangika point of view, one does achieve nirvana through meditation on the 16 aspects, but through the Mahayana interpretation of them that we've talked about before when we talked about the Four Noble Truths. So let me just go here again. So what Jimpa just said here about the presentation where the conceptualization of grasping at things as true existence is characterized as what is to be relinquished on the path of meditation. Jeffrey's translation says this: likewise, you should know that the treatment of conceptual consciousnesses apprehending phenomena to be truly established as 9 levels of objects. And he points out that this means when he talks about great, medium, and small, he's talking about 3 sets of great, medium, and small. So objects, Okay, conceptual consciousness apprehending phenomena as 9 levels of objects. Path of meditation in 9 levels. So when we talk about what is to be abandoned, what is to be abandoned first? Subtle things or gross things? David.
Gross things.
Gross things, like cleaning out we just finished Thanksgiving, so maybe some of you had to clean out the potato pan. First, you take out the gross potatoes, then you get the scouring pad to get the medium potatoes, and then you get the scouring powder and the water to get the subtle potatoes out, and this maybe even the smell, right? So each of those have 3 levels. There's the gross, easily taken out by your children, the medium gross, and the subtle gross. Then you have the gross medium, the medium, and the small medium, right? Then you have the gross small, the medium small, and then the small or subtle things to be relinquished. That's what's being talked about here. So in the Svatantrika system, grasping to true existence is an affliction. Snehi?
Yes.
Grasping to
Conventionally, they accept, conventionally they accept true exist. I don't know how to say it. Conventionally, they accept that things do exist, but ultimately they would refute.
I'll say it again. So I'll ask KT this time. KT, or Katie, is grasping to true existence, that's generally considered to be ignorance, right? Is that, for the Svatantrika Majjhamaka, is that an affliction? Is that something that's abandoned on the way to becoming an arhat?
For the Svatantrika, I believe yes.
Oh,
but I
Nadine? Nadine's my
Yes, I
go-to.
believe, yes.
For them, that's an affliction.
Grasping a true existence.
Oh, no.
No.
Who thinks otherwise? Paul?
It's been too long since I've studied this.
Oh, no. Well, we talked about it before. So for Svatantrika, grasping to true existence is not an affliction. You don't have to get rid of that to become an arhat. You just have to meditate on the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. The grasping to inherent existence, or let's say grasping to true existence for Svatantrika, is an obstruction to omniscience. Venerable Noang, so this gets back to you. This is connects with your question before about how does obstructions to omniscience come in. For the Svatantrika Majjhamikas, grasping to true existence is an obstruction to omniscience. The arhats don't have to eliminate that. The grasping to true existence is only abandoned on the path of meditation, slowly over 9 levels. That's what this is talking about for the Svatantrika. So Richard, when you were saying, where are these things coming up? So this is just talking about bringing up the fact that for when you're talking about getting rid of, abandoning, grasping the true existence, one might be confused, but might be remembering, aren't there 9 levels of getting rid of the grasping the true existence? So he says, similar, or I'll read Jeffries. Likewise, you should know that the treatment of conceptual consciousnesses apprehending phenomena to be truly established, truly existent, it's not talking about inherently existent, as 9 levels of objects, 3 cents each of great, medium, and small, to be abandoned on the path of meditation, and thereupon the association of these with 9 levels of the path of meditation, 3 sets each of small, medium, and great. So what does that mean? So when you're talking about the objects, the things to be abandoned, you start with the gross things. And the strength of your wisdom there is small. So corresponding, you have 9 levels of objects to be abandoned, starting with the gross down to the subtle. And in terms of the wisdoms that abandon them, you start with the small wisdom. Your wisdom is weak at the beginning, then the medium small, then the great small, and then the small medium, the medium, the great medium, and so forth. So that's the second thing. The 3 sets of small, medium, and great as antidotes, as is done in the autonomy school. So Lama, so Jeffrey has added in what Richard would find some satisfaction and say, "Oh, why is he talking about it?" That's one might have been confusing this discussion, remembering something from the autonomy school. The autonomy school is the Svatantrika, right? So, as done in the autonomy school, also requires interpretation, being something spoken with respect to certain trainees who temporarily are not able to realize fully both selflessnesses, coarse and subtle. So the coarse one would be the grasping to self-supporting, substantially existent person, and the subtle one would be grasping to truly existent things. This is like the fact that the mind-only school's treatment of conceptual consciousnesses apprehending apprehended object and apprehending subject as different substantial entities, as 9 levels of objects to be abandoned, great, medium, and small, by the path of meditation, and thereupon the association of these with 9 levels of the path of meditation requires interpretation. Whoa. Suvanj.
Venerable George, is there a reference to this 9 levels? Is there some material out there?
Yeah. So in the study of salam, so sa means grounds, lam means paths, right? There's actually texts about this. Like some of you are studying with Gen Dan, isn't it? The Nagi Salam right now. The paths, the grounds and paths of secret mantra, or mantra. So just in the sutra salam, it starts with the grounds and paths of the Hinayana, and then the grounds and paths of the let's say of the Chittamatra, the grounds and paths of the Svatantrika, and then finally the grounds and paths of the Prasangika, which we haven't talked about the Svatantrika so much here. I can't remember if we've gone over it in detail. I think we've gone over it slightly before in the first 5 chapters, when Jeffrey's translation of in his Compassion in Tibetan Buddhism, where he translated the first 5 chapters of Gompa Rapso. I think in the appendix of that, it talks about the 9 levels. So what it means is that from the Svatantra, we just mentioned, from the Svatantrika point of view, when you achieve the path of, let's say, you start abandoning the obstructions to omniscience on the path of meditation, after the path of seeing. Path of seeing, you've realized emptiness directly, you got rid of the artificial afflictions. And then on the path of meditation, you start to get rid of the innate afflictions, but also you start to abandon the obstructions to omniscience, according to Svatantrika. What does Shankar say? Again, okay, curious why.
It's okay. You don't. You can. You can reply to me later.
Yeah. Generally, when you have a teacher in your class at the monastery, you'd often refer to them as Gen. Yeah, like that. What is that, John or Paul? What is that? What is the Tibetan? What is the Sanskrit for that? When you refer to your teacher, like
Gen.
Gen.
It's just usually just
Not
means like
Ken.
usually
Acharya?
elder. Usually just means something like elder, right? So would that be like Shtavira? Gen, like I'm thinking Gen
That's
Raga
venerable
Gen.
then, but
Yeah,
Venerable.
it's like teacher is like teacher and student. It's a word
Like
for
Acharya, right? I'm something.
Acharya would be master. That would
no,
be
it's
the
different. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Why Don Hendricks is yeah, it's sort of honorific title, just without calling him Geshe or Acharya or something like this. It's just saying my teacher Don. Okay, so we talked about the Svatantrika abandoning the obstructions to omniscience. From their point of view, you abandon the Bodhisattva abandons the obstructions to omniscience on the Mahayana path of meditation in 9 levels. And also from the Chittamatra point of view, you abandon the obstructions in 9 stages also, as is mentioned here. What did Jeffrey say here? Thus, this is like the fact that the Chittamatra, the mind-only school's treatment of conceptual consciousnesses apprehended object and apprehending subject as different substantial entities. Remember that when you talk about emptiness in the Chittamatra, Chittamatra talks about the emptiness of the object and the subject as being different substances. You know what I'm talking about? KT, are you following? I could see Nadine nodding in the corner.
Yeah, the foundational consciousness, and then with the subject, the mind, and then has a foundational consciousness, and then the object doesn't exist because
it doesn't exist. To our minds right now, outer objects appear to be completely separate from the mind that apprehends them. But from the Chittamatra point of view, as you say, on the foundation consciousness, there's a seed, a bija, that when it ripens in both the consciousness and the object at the same time. The object appears to be external from the mind, but it's as the same nature of the mind. So it's empty of being the apprehended object and the apprehending subject are empty of being different substances, right? In the Chittamatra, mind-only school. So this is like the fact that the mind-only school's treatment of conceptual consciousnesses, apprehended object and apprehended subject as being different substantial entities, that also, from their point of view, are 9 levels of objects to be abandoned. So he's just saying these are also provisional understandings. Snehi, bring some light into our life.
I bring question.
Okay, good.
So back to the Svatantrika, I just wanted to clarify if I got this correct. So for them, grasping at true existence is not an obscuration for liberation. It's not an affliction. But for them, grasping at true existence is an obstruction to omniscience. So for omniscience, then you have to get rid of it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Exactly, yeah. Minto, show your smiling face to us.
Oh, hi, what about yours?
First, I saw the fish. This was like one of those horror movies. Yeah, tell me.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, first I want to say that thank you so much for giving us all this mantra transmission, especially the Amrita use mantra. I find it very useful. So
Yeah, good.
like I don't think much you can see it, but it's like a Amrita use mandala. So
Oh, okay. So you're following up on last week's or the last class's transmission of the what is it called? Not the Amitayos, although it's sometimes called Amitayos.
Paramitayur jnana.
Yeah,
Aparamita.
Ayurjnana. Right. So thank you for that. Yeah. It's interesting that, let's say, for the Shakyamuni mantra, Om Mune Mune Maha Munea 3. Let's say the Prajna Paramita mantra. Who knows the Prajna Paramita mantra? Rachel, do you know the Prajna Paramita mantra?
Hayata Om. Oh no, sorry. Where
That's
am I?
okay. Sometimes.
I started doing medicine Buddha instead. So,
Gate.
Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha.
So Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi. So there's 5 in the say the Shakyamuni mantra or Dharani. There are 3 Mune Maha Muneya in the Dharani that we had in the last class, the long Dharani of immeasurable longevity and wisdom. There are, what was it? Punye. This is sort of like the vocative of punya, meaning merit, right? Punye, maha punye. That's kind of like muni, maha muni, right? Punye, maha punye, aparamita punye. That's 4. And then it comes aparamita punya jnana sambaro pajite. So different of the mantras, as you start to hear these different mantras and dharanis and receive the lungs of them and find yourself inspired to say them, in various circumstances, you have a better idea. Let me mention, although Lama Zopa Rinpoche has probably given great detailed benefits of the Shakyamuni mantra, I'll just read from one of the sites. I think it's just from Wikipedia. So they quoted Mikpam Rinpoche said, "It is through the force of discovering this Dharani, the Shakyamuni Buddha Dharani, Shakyamuni Buddha mantra, that the king of the Shakyas himself attained enlightenment." That means Buddha Shakyamuni attained enlightenment, and that Avalokiteshvara became the supreme of all the bodhisattvas. Through simply hearing this dharani, a vast accumulation of merit will easily be gained, and all karmic obscurations will be purified. And when reciting it, obstacles will not occur. This has been taught in the abridged Prajna Paramita Sutra. Other teachings, something happened. You're okay? Other teachings say that by reciting this dharani only once, merely once, all the harmful actions you have committed through 800,000 eons will be purified. They say that it possesses boundless qualities such as these and is the sacred heart essence of Buddha Shakyamuni. So every time you recite this mantra, you purify karma that was accumulated over 800,000 eons. That doesn't mean that you purify all of it. It means that up to that limit, 800,000 eons in the past, karma, negative karma, one recitation said it takes a, like those cheese things you take in New York City, you sliver off the top of the cheese. What are they called? You take some layer off the top of them of 800,000 eons worth of karma. So just reciting once is not going to do it. But having received the lung, maybe the cut is a little bit deeper. You cut a little bit more of those 800,000 eons of negative karma. So I just wanted to share that with Minto Vu.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to make an offering of Amrita Yus mandala to you. I'm not sure you can see it.
Oh yeah. Give it to, okay. I got it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah. So we will begin next time with the next section then. How the merely conventional appears or does not appear to the three individuals. That's where we'll start next time, okay? I'll just read the first part of the first paragraph there. Entities, though not possessing intrinsic existence, appear to childish ordinary beings to be intrinsically existent, to do so, to possess intrinsic existence. And through this, they deceive such beings. They deceive themselves, right? Or as Jeffrey says, furthermore, these things, whereas they do not inherently exist, appear to childish beings to inherently exist, thereby deceiving them. In contrast, for the three classes of persons referred to above, what were they? What were those three classes of beings? David, do you remember? Three classes of beings? Stephen?
The Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha, Arhats, and the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas on the pure grounds.
Right. So that's the three beings here. In contrast, for the three classes of persons referred to above, who are different from those ordinary childish beings, things remain contrived entities that are dependently originated. For them, they exist as mere conventionalities, not truly existent. And then it goes on. So that's what we'll be starting next time. If you have time on Monday, hopefully Mikhail will be in discussion group because Snehi had asked at the beginning about Mikhail's question that he had heard the Gandhantipa, the present Gandhantipa, throne holder of the Gelugpa tradition, saying that ignorance, the view of the transitory collection could also be a primary mind. It seemed to be confusing. We'll discuss that in discussion group and all of this. So before we end, how are we doing? Any questions that you don't like to go end the class without clarifying? How are we doing? Oh, Minto again.
Yeah, I think my question I also wanted to ask just now was that there's 9 levels of meditation. So like going from the individual liberation all the way to the ultimate view. So if you are doing meditation, do we go through 9 level basically one by one sequentially? So you're supposed to go part of individual liberation, you got it. Then you go to the next level and you got it. You go to the next level, you got it. All the way to the ultimate level.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. I've lost. So for instance, even for Prasangika, there are said to be that can be said to be 9 levels, but they are achieved. You are abandoning the innate grasping to true existence in 9 levels as afflictions, not in terms of there being obstructions to omniscience on the path of meditation. But that's for another time. I just want to end by saying, in terms of the Dalai Lama's teachings, when you get a chance to hear, incredible skillful means. So, when we talk about upaya, the skill of means, it's not enough simply to have good intentions to help people to do things. you also have to have the wisdom to know the outcome of your actions. Say, for instance, oh, I'm having, I guess, electricity problems here. Say, for instance, you want to give something to someone or you want to help them in some way. You have to understand as a bodhisattva what the outcome of those actions are, whether they're really going to be beneficial. Say, for instance, Shariputra wanted to give his hand to the in a previous life before he was the arhat. You know the story from the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. When he had actually developed bodhicitta. He had not solidified the bodhicitta yet by reaching what's called the gold-like bodhicitta. And some spirit came, malignant spirit wanted to cause his downfall and asked him to give his hand. So give his right hand. So he cut off his right hand and presented it to this other person. And the person said, "Oh, how could you be so terrible? I will not accept it. You gave it to me with your left hand." That's the left hand in India was the hand you used to wash your underside after you go to the toilet. So is considered, you never give anything with the left hand. You always offer with your right hand, right? So Shariputra was so aghast by this that he lost his bodhicitta. He didn't have the skillful means to know what the result of this would be. So we have to be aware when we try to practice the bodhisattva activities, giving ourselves, helping others, and so forth, what the outcome will be. If you don't have that clairvoyance, that's not necessarily the time to do. One of the great Tibetan geshes, one of the Kadampa geshes said, "This time now, this age of degeneration, is not the time to give great teachings, to become, to help people in many ways. This is the time to tame your own mind." So I always find that very, very inspiring. I haven't been able to find the quotation written down for a long time. It will pop up somewhere. So the implication is that although we would like to, at this age, we're in the age of degeneration, and we would like to be doing all of these great bodhisattva activities, helping others in various ways and so forth. But sometimes that becomes a hindrance to our continued practice. If you give away your material and so forth, you no longer have the chance to practice. You no longer have time to practice. So this is what he was emphasizing. This is the time to tame your own mind. As a result of taming your own mind, then we will be able to help others in the future. Okay, I just wanted to end with that. So, Snehi, if you'd like to put up the dedication prayers. Mintu is sending hearts out to us there. Due to these virtues, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that very state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen in my mind stream or in the mind stream of others, may that arise and grow as a result of these merits and these virtues, and may that which has arisen in our mind streams not diminish, but increase more and more. And then for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I'm hoping very soon, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the conquerors, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, the conqueror Losang Drakpa, Lama Tsongkhapa, the spiritual father, and his sons, Gyaltsab-je and Khedrup-je, together with your lineage, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow here and now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings, and for mother sentient beings, you suddenly departed to peace, at which point I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the Triple Gem and the great waves of bodhicitta of the Bodhisattvas, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And then finally, for all of our spiritual teachers, the Dalai Lamas and so forth, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateway for fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, as I mentioned before, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, I make this request, please live long and stable lives. Okay, thank you very much. I see the Amitabha Amitayus mandala behind Mintuvo. Thanks for chewing these dry bones with me this afternoon. I look forward to seeing as many as have interest on Monday and our last class of the year next week. There's also office hour afterwards if anyone has unresolved questions you wanted to talk about. But I will see you on Monday and next Saturday. Take care. Be
Thank
good.
you, Venerable George.
Thank you.